My nieces went missing 4 days ago. My sister, Shuna, is a pasture animal on her way home to the slaughter. She's currently been treated in McEastport Hospital ICU after my brother-in-law found her soaking in a hot bath with opened wrists. He's a wreck, too. Now's let deal with his suicidal wife. To be honest, I only believe she'll continue to make attempts until they turn up. Last night, Shauna called me frantic, repeating to me the phrase, "The pipes are wrestling through the walls, my head is a buzzsaw." Her husband found her almost dead, but not an hour later. My nieces, Chelsea and Christina, both 13-year-old twins, were last seen on their way home from school, walking into the woods to take the trail home. Our tight-knit community, God bless them, have been trading shifts with search parties, but the reality of it is looking more and more grim, and the groups have practically dwindled to nothing. Consequently, the incessant whirring of helicopters in the sky the first 2 nights were a constant reminder of the horror of a situation. But it was they who made a hopeful discovery. 2 girls were found in the middle of a second night walking through the woods hand in hand at 2:15 in the morning. My wife and I mean besped vice sisters have to get in coal. The 2 girls looked eerily similar to my nieces, except their noses were bigger, and they told police that the names are Agatha. Both of them. Actually, let me rephrase that. One of them said their names were Agatha and Agatha. The other was found with her mouth sewn shut with twine and dried, pasty blood cascading down her chin and neck. "Don't touch her," repeated the uninjured girl as she thrashed and wailed about while he took her sister to the hospital. "You can't let her talk, she'll let it out," the girl demanded as she screamed and kicked. We went with my bullet to the station to identify the girls. "And these your daughters?" the detective asked. I don't. No, they're not. I don't think. My girls were in white dresses, and they had coats on. After all, it was late November and quite cold. My girls don't have hair that dark. I'm sorry, detective, but and confused. Furthermore, my nieces are quite talkative, and it would make no sense that one of them would have gotten a fucking mouth sewn shut and be not just cavalier about her, but joyful, according to the police. They explained that when they approached the girls, they were twirling around and giggling. Even strangers at the first responding officers both expressed intense feelings of uneasiness coming upon them. It's been 2 days that the girls were taken into custody. Doctors have successfully removed the wire from the second girl's mouth, and she'd been asleep ever since. I went to visit my sister in the psych ward today. She was mostly despondent and powdy sedated. "Dane, sound them?" She slid, half running off. "Are you asking me or telling me the questions?" "You." She go and solved them. "Gas." As she ran her fingers up and down the stitches on her wrists, she repeated to me the same thing from the other night. "The pipes are rattling, and my head is a buzzsaw." As far as those gals are concerned, I received a call this afternoon from my brother-in-law, asking me to please come over to his house. It sounded urgent, but he refused to talk on the phone. I wasn't prepared. When I showed up, he texted me, "Just come in." There was a vehicle in the driveway I didn't recognize. When I entered the home, I nearly fell backwards. My brother-in-law, sister, and both of my nieces were seated on the couch. Christina had stitches running along her upper and lower lips, and her sister was holding her. Both were crying. Suddenly, the Shaw's African-American woman entered the room from the kitchen, along with a police officer. "Okay, Christina, he's here. What did you want to tell us?" She responded with something horrifying, and I've no idea what world I'm even living in. She murmured painfully through her mutilated face. "I just wanted to see Uncle Greg's eyes when I told you that he called us both on the way home from school, took us into the old cabin in the woods, and sewed my mouth shut. And then, just remarked, he tied me off the main watch, and then left." I couldn't stop shivering. Nares shredded, heart rate rising. This can't be happening. Greg Reed, you under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. I told you she'd let her out. I told you. Da Yun Chi, 20th of November, 2020. I visited my brother Greg at jail today. He's facing up to 40 years for child abuse, endangerment, and attempted murder. I should have foreseen something might manifest one day, but after 27 years, he seems to have been handling it well. I guess he broke, and he deserves what he's gone. But I can't help but feel sorrow over it as well. A long time ago, Greg was abducted when we were kids on his way home from school by a psychopath in our town named Agatha. She did things to him. In his secret Ilfie told me that she threatened him with the words, "If you say anything to anyone, I'll come and find you, show your mouth shut, and leave you in a cabin to rot." He said when she was abusing him, he could do nothing but focus on the wrestling pipes in the moments of dissociation. For years, he would draw pictures of the old woman and violently stab it with pencils, threatening that he'd find her and do the same thing with her she did to him. Well, he did find her, in his own delusional fantasy. In the end, I exploded on him, telling him I hope he rots for what he did to my girls. Before we parted ways, I asked him one question. Why did it leave Chelsea unharmed? Ultimately, she's the one who got out of her bonds, and the reason they escaped. Please tell me this Felbunt. His reply made my blood run cold. He said, I was going back home to get a busso. It was not a few moments from my husband John got home from work to tell me that our next-door neighbour, Mrs. Swanson, had become Fred. Judas is a war widow. As in, her husband was blown to bits in the invasion of Normandy, and in the ensuing decades, she never remarried. Judith is 91 years old. It would be preposterous to think of a centenarian giving birth from a body which is a natural, decaying artifact, whose fecundity card expired 4 decades ago. Celebrate the vernal season with the birth of a new legacy, read the invitation, scrolled across the top of an image on a blank head, half in blue outlined with short hair, and the other half in pink, with eyelashes in a ponytail. The date of the event was inscribed on the bond. Of course, I was there more than vexed and assured up, and nobody else was there but myself, Mrs. Swanson, and her granddaughter Isabella. Unfortunately, very few of my grandmother's friends or siblings are still alive, but thank you for coming, and I assume you can already tell her that and my parents are estranged. Though it's no problem, I appreciate the invite, I said in obvious disquieted tone. Would you like to see the sonogram? And so. You're late, I repeatedly texted John, obtaining no response. Where's your grandma? I asked Isabella, while gazing upon a black on my X-ray of an obviously healthy fetus. Oh, she's just putting a face on. You know, this is a proud day for her, and she wants to look her best. I can imagine, I replied, trying to be nonchalant at this ever more bothersome turn of events, but I wouldn't be rude and just leave. Where's your husband? Asked Isabella with a somewhat excitable disposition. She gleamed a bright smile the entire time. Oh, well, he's on his way. He left earlier to help his brother fix his car. She breathed faintly. Well, this is a lovely house. Well, thank you. It's mostly my doing. Graham doesn't move around so anymore. I understand. Several awkward moments of silence passed before Isabella hit me with an rather odd and admittedly forward question. Has your husband been coming home late from work recently? In fact, he has. But how can she know? Aptly, he has. Why? And why do you think the two of you haven't had children yet? Asked dumb joke. My pus began to thump in my causewayed artery, and forehead began to perspire. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's wife. All grundalter would be more fitting. With very pious, I'm sure you'd agree. Before I could answer, I heard the footsteps creaking slowly down the stairs like some unspoken impending doom, and my heart began to race. To me in, "You come, mother?" "Oh, Hoddy," Isabella began, "the so is guided. This is my gender reveal party. Do you really believe my grandmother could bear children in 81? Anxiety, shortness of breath, nearing nervous breakdown. "Well, what are you telling me?" I asked with quivering, rapid-fire speech. "I'm telling you that we've taken care of everything. Not only your divorce, but the life insurance settlement's coming your way. Oh, and there she is. Over there, Gram." My hands began to shake as Mrs. Swanson made her final step from behind the wall in her orthopedic white shoes to the living room floor and turned the corner. I nearly fainted when she turned to look at me, her eyes bulging through the sockets of my husband's carved-off face, smattered over hers with a grey bun protruding out the back. And in a spur second, Isabella warmly placed her hand on my sweating, shivering palm and whispered it to me. "It's fine." "Beware, Nator Ryungi," the tour guide said upon hearing where we wanted to camp. "Beware who?" "Don't ask how to pronounce so, 'cause it's been 8 years, and I still can't do her. It's just local legend. It's a demon. He comes at night near the cliffs." He smiled cheekily and gave us a compass. My wife and I went on vacation to New Zealand, camping for a night at the gorgeous, picturesque Lake Taupo. Lake Taupo was actually in the cauldron of a volcano, subsequently leading to speculation about supernatural phenomena in local legend, and claims that it's one of Earth's gateways to hell. Because we went in July, their winter, most of the beach was barren. Also, we chose to camp on the northwestern side, which was rife with 90-degree cliffs, and carved into those cliffs are giant faces made by natives centuries ago. The intended purpose is to keep the cauldron from eruption. Superstition. And if you're going to seek a transfer flight, might hook our wall out. There's something foreboding of old giants grimacing faces looking into your soul, carved 20 feet tall in granite. It wasn't until nightfall that the resting landscape erupted, not magma, but dreadful screeching deep into the brush behind us. We'd fallen asleep so peacefully until it began. Simultaneously we awoke. We could have heard it for miles. "An owl?" she asked. "First all I've ever heard." It was a countryman's spot. It was emanating all around us, and turning in the wafts ahead. "It's a hulk. It's hovering over us right now." It was the rational explanation. Until it got louder. It was obviously ground level. "I think we shouldn't have come here," she said shakily, and this is when the branches behind us began crackling, and whispering voices approached. I flashed my light on them. Teenagers, 2 boys and a girl. "What the fuck are you all doing here?" I raged. "We're sorry," one of the boys spoke. "We were going to play a prank until we heard it." A thick Aussie dialect proves them to be locals. Consequently, just by looking at their expressions, they were as disquieted as we were, bordering on pure fright. "It chased us here. Something in the woods." The girl cut in with, "We were running the path and it came up out of the dirt." "Whatever it is," began the first boy. "It's just beyond the—" Before he could finish, that horrific, high-pitched shriek sounded out just yards away, both behind and in front. And this is when we noticed a mist rising from the water. As we gazed upon the water, something deep black slowly broke the surface. In this moment, the horrifying screeches zeroed in on the murky water figure. The teens collectively screamed and bolted through the forest. I suppose we should have too. and despite my wife tugging at my arm, I couldn't mares. Instead, I pulled my hunting knife and waited for the creature to step onto land. However, our shock and terror diminished when I shone my light on it. It wasn't a monster, just a man in skeever attire. "Oi," he shouted. "You folks camping? We thought you were, something else." This time of year we have to check mercury toxicity in the water. Less people in the winter, so we truck it at night. Didn't mean to frighten you. We had something in the woods. I swear, before shining my light on him, I witnessed a mass of long, black tentacles protruding from his head and torso. Also, the pungent stench of rotten eggs wafted in the air. As the man continued to approach, stepping in long strides because of his flippers, something just didn't feel right. Didn't feel right that the noises ceased. It didn't feel good that the screeches seemed to have come from him. I know it's just out of place that a scuba diver would simply appear from the lake at 1:30 a.m. "Should we not be camping here then?" my wife questions. "Especially since the water is toxic?" No, you're fine. It's me who interrupted you. And that's why, the water's fine." Suddenly his voice changed before our ears as he moved in closer. "Do you know what the demon?" We just looked at each other with worried glances. Yeah, the tall guy told us about something." And finally, the scuba diver had said something so terrifying that we just ran to our car and left our things. In a deep, baritone grumble, he opened up his mask, displaying a completely absent face, as literally nothing but the back of the inside of his helmet was all we could say. And finally said in a dreadful tone, "You don't even know what this is, do you?" We sprinted until our legs were on fire, got in the car and peeled out, all the way to the hotel about 15 miles away. We didn't sleep much that night. The next day, we went back to the tourist office and met the same man as the day before. I told him about the scuba diver, but left out anything about the demon. He regarded us with a look of confusion and a forward bow, mentioned how odd it was. "We don't have divers in this lake because of the high levels of sulfur at the bottom of the caldera. The pressure's too high, so that makes some sense," he said as he scratched his chin. "You sure it wasn't a prank?" "We sure," my wife interrupted. "There were some kids, but I said they just wanted to play a prank on us. Something chasing through the woods. I suppose the sulfur explains the rotten eggs, but shouldn't it have smelled like that the entire time?" The tour guide said one last thing. It still chills me to the bone. "Netara Ryungi. Well, this sounds superstitious, or..." "That? Well, the lookers have been saying it for centuries. They can come as anything at once. If you heard shrieking, then me will probably on his radar." We went and got our things, which were untouched. Left, never went back. "That man is a bullshit," my wife said, on the drive to the airport. I just nodded my head in affirmation. However, I didn't agree. I never told the tour guide about shrieking. Nukve explained the black sludge all over our tent. It was about 2:30 in the morning when I decided to take a walk. Tomorrow's grades would start coming in on my report card, and uneasy to relieve some anxiety. I passed by church when an insistent man at the intersection waiting at the crosswalk. He was wearing a business suit, rain hat, and holding an open umbrella. That it wasn't raining. I found it odd. I just wanted to be alone, so I put down my head and kept going. My anxiety is getting worse and worse. Next, I passed by a playground, the distant streetlights barely illuminating. I noticed the person crawling across the monkey bars, not hanging from them, but crawling across the top like a centipede. Kids. Before turning away, I saw something that filled me with dread. A closed umbrella resting against a slide. I pulled my head down, I walked faster. My anxiety was skyrocketing. Soon, I approached a row of houses, and I swear I saw someone crawl underneath an SUV, but not come out the other side. As I passed, and it is the same umbrella propped against a vehicle. My anxiety tripled, and my heart began racing. I turned and began sprinting back to my apartment. After a few hundred yards, Kim looked like a lost one. I can't fathom how this person was getting ahead of me. As I pulled the keys from my pocket, I noticed one single vehicle parked on the curb. All I could see was a silhouette of a man in a rain hat, staring at me. It was just then, when I pulled open the door, that I felt something fall onto my foot. An umbrella was laying across my toes. I hurried up and slammed the door behind me, locking it, and ran to my room. I felt a panic attack coming. My psychiatrist always told me that's going to get the best of me. Just as I was about to enter my apartment, the girl across the hall opened her door. "Hey, can you help me? My smell detector's going off and I don't know how to fix it." What stressful era this was. I've always liked this girl. "Yeah, no problem." I smiled, acting as nonchalant as possible. "Shut madame," went in. Signedly, a little relief. She was trying to go to bed. I'd have loved to have stayed, but I'm not that forward, so we exchanged numbers. I went back into my apartment, gleaming at a number in my phone. Adriana. I fixed on the lights, and it hit me. I left my door unlocked the entire time. The anxiousness returned, worse than ever. Not sure if I can control it much longer. In the split-second moment I saw the umbrella leaning against the couch, a grumbling baritone voice breathed in my ear. "It's not your fault. I was always this dead-eyed of you." The lights flicked off behind me, and I felt the blade go into my back. I don't know whether to pull out or let myself go. Maybe I'm better off this way. But I always said I was delusional. I've been staying at my mum's, taking care of her while she has COVID. My aunt Linda lives in the basement as well, and has been for 10 years. She's very ill, living with severe COPD, constantly having trouble breathing. She also lost a leg due to a septic infection, and is wheelchair-bound. Also, because of her inability, she's morbidly obese. I went downstairs to check on her, and she simply asked for a cup of ice, a very typical request, as she dozed off with a oxygen mask on. I got a bath, and when I got out, all the lights in the house were out as per usual, but I saw someone open my door and walk into my room in the dark from the end of the hall. It startled me, and I nearly fell back. Them. I crept into my room and aimed my phone light. My aunt was sitting on my bed. I was in shock. Not only that, but the room was freezing. I can't explain why, but an imperceptible feeling of dread had my veins pumping ice. She was naked, and when I shone the light on her, she looked up at me and said, "Bunny, I'll have my legs." I dashed out literally ready to scream, and ran down into the basement. My aunt was lying, facing the door, lips blue, and tongue hanging out of her mouth, looking at me. I shuddered at the image. I checked her pulse, and she didn't have one. This is a true story, told me by a friend about 5 years ago. Here's his paraphrased account. I'm a Marine. That the St. Thomas occurred, I was 2 days old from ending my tour. The intent told us that a band of insurgents were held up inside a series of caves in Adar. We slipped out and searched 2 deep cabins of groups of fray. Every corner turned came with an unparalleled feeling of anxiety and dread, thinking that any second one of us would step on an IED and end up blown up to bits or trash in rubble forever. Once we hit the 200-yard mark, My team lead got a call on his walkie-talkie that a man and woman bearing rifles were apprehended. It turned out that they weren't the insurgents we roughed up. They were found deep within the cave with guns and an old pseudophone stone tablet, seated around a small fire. They were detained and sent back to base in an armored vehicle, while I kept the tablets in my possession. Just before in the cave, our hearts nearly stopped when a bold, curdling screech emanated from deeper inside. It sounded like some sort of animal. We didn't want to explore further. The front of the tablets was a transcription that I couldn't figure out. Flip side was a drawing. A snake with horns, reptilian eyes, and serpent's tongue. Decisively old and worn, the drawing was actually quite full nerving. The cat would be as a souvenir. Before the cover were loaded at his truck, the woman looked at me and said, "It'd be wise to leave it behind." The following several nights, I had a barrage of horrific dreams where it brutally murdered my wife and daughter, and upon waking, I'd hear a voice damning me to hell. I brushed off his stress, though oddly, my sense of smell was unusually strong. I could smell flowers 50 yards away. The dreams persisted after I got home. I showed my wife a tableau, and she kept it as a souvenir. She placed it in a small shelf we had on the wall. Not 2 days after getting back, I'd wake up in the middle of the night from those terrible dreams, only to find out my wife was out of bed. I'd discover her wandering aimlessly through the house, mumbling to herself and all disorientated, like a somnambulance. It's went off in 2 weeks, and then one night, he broke loose. When I got out of shower on this particular night, I wandered to the bedroom to see my wife sitting on the edge of the bed, just staring at the tappers on the wall in a trance-like state. I spoke to her repeatedly, but was unable to get her to respond. She was just staring. And looked to her eyes, and sure enough, they were fixated on that tablet. I lightly grasped her chin and turned her head toward me. I shouldn't have allowed. She gazed into my eyes, with big, dilated pupils, rendering her irises fully black. She was gritting her teeth in so angry, demonic scowl. I'd never seen a look of true hatred until that moment. I could feel it penetrating my soul. Then, something magical and evil in equal measure occurred. She started whispering at me, stammering what sounded like gibberish, but more frighteningly, speaking in tones. In this moment, her voice sounded like a man's, and the room began to fill it with a pungent, repugnant stench which was indescribable, like rotting garbage inside of a dumpster, and the look in my wife's unblinking eyes sent chills down my spine, and out of all of my hairs stood to get tension. I felt so vulnerable at the moment, and subconsciously knew we'd been invaded by an evil force. She looked like she wanted to harm me. Pangano. I could think of nothing else but to grab it by the hand, close my eyes, and tray the rosary over and over. Her palms were cold as ice, and clutched so stiff that I'd not have been able to pry them open with a vice grip. As seconds passed, I finally heard Adam, spoken in a sweet, feminine voice I'd become accustomed to all Jew. "Adam, what has happened?" "That baby, you okay? Tumbles run." She replied with, "I don't know. I got all the top and came in here. I don't remember anything in between then and you come in here. Was X-Ful him?" "No, babe, he would just staring." "Adam, please carry it up, Topla." "Why me?" I asked. Her response, they my blood through and cobble. "Because ever since you brought her home, I've been getting a thing that I want to kill you and Lacey. Something evil is in our heart." I grabbed her immediately, tossed her outside and trudged. The next day, threw in the river. Ever since that day, things have gone up to no. I don't know what exactly happened to her that night, but she lays a claim to have seen shadows moving around the house just after I got home, out day and night. One day, she said she saw a black, shadowy mass hovering in the center of the living room. She said, I could feel that watching me. And worse, I felt that it hated me. I think something was inside of her that night, and I believe had I kept but turbulence, she might have went through at one of her at the end.